The underestimated species. The galactic hegemony had ruled the stars for 3 millennia. Their massive crystalline vessels traversed the void between galaxies with ease, their quantum weaponry capable of collapsing stars into singularities, their neural network technology allowing instantaneous communication across hundreds of light years. The Vardaxians, 12-foot-tall bipeds with iridescent scales and 4 arms, had subjugated over 700 sapient species across 27 galaxies. They didn't consider themselves conquerors, merely shepherds guiding lesser species toward enlightenment under their benevolent rule. Earth's first contact came not with diplomatic overtures or cultural exchange, but with the sudden materialization of a hegemony corvette in low orbit over Geneva. Admiral Clovorex, his scales shifting from emerald to azure as he addressed the hastily assembled United Earth Council, didn't bother with pleasantries. Your species has achieved sufficient technological advancement to warrant notice, he announced, mandibles clicking in what humans would later learn was amusement. You will now receive the privilege of hegemony citizenship. Tier 7, naturally. Your resources and limited manufacturing capabilities will serve the greater good. In exchange, we shall prevent your inevitable self-destruction and gradually introduce appropriate technologies. When Council President Amara Okafor asked what would happen if humanity refused, the Admiral's scales rippled with patterns of light that translated roughly to contemptuous pity. Refusal is not a function available to Tier 7 species, he replied. It would indicate neurological deficiencies requiring adjustment. The demonstration that followed, the complete molecular disassembly of an uninhabited Pacific island, ended further discussion. For 5 years, humanity bent the knee. Earth's resources flowed off-world. Rare earth minerals, water from the polar caps, biological samples, and human labor. The hegemony established administrative centers on every continent, their towering structures of living crystal and neural mesh standing as constant reminders of humanity's new place in the cosmic hierarchy. In return, they provided technological scraps, improved crop yields, limited medical advances, cleaner energy production, just enough to keep the population compliant while extracting maximum value from the planet. Dr. Sophia Chen watched from her office at what had once been NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, now designated Hegemony Resource Coordination Facility 47. At 43, the former propulsion systems engineer had once designed the engines that would have taken humans to Mars. Now she supervised the systematic dismantling of human space programs, cataloging equipment for hegemony assessment. They don't even bother securing their technical documentation, she whispered to her colleague, Dr. Quain-Bosset, as they reviewed hegemony specifications for atmospheric harvesters. They think we're too primitive to understand their systems. Quain nodded, his eyes darting to check for monitoring drones. They've conquered so many worlds they've forgotten what it means to face a genuine challenge. Sophia's expression hardened. That's exactly their weakness. In a repurposed nuclear bunker beneath the Canadian Rockies, Operation Phoenix took shape. Sophia had assembled 200 of Earth's finest minds. Engineers, physicists, programmers, material scientists, all of them working in absolute secrecy, beyond the hegemony's surveillance network. They expect us to follow their technological development path, Sophia explained during Phoenix's inaugural briefing. They assume we'll try to build better versions of their quantum shields, their neural mesh communication, their singularity drives. We won't. We're going to create something they've never encountered before. The hegemony's technological superiority rested on 3 pillars: near instantaneous communication through neural mesh networks, impenetrable quantum defense fields, and overwhelming offensive capabilities through controlled singularity manipulation. Their entire military doctrine, developed over thousands of years, relied on perfect coordination of overwhelming force, a strategy that had never failed against technologically inferior opponents. But they have a critical vulnerability, explained Dr. Takumi Nakamura, their quantum information specialist. Their entire fleet operates like a singular organism, Every ship linked through the neural mesh. Each vessel contains only partial command functionality, because they've never needed independent operations. For 3 years, Phoenix developed in utmost secrecy. The hegemony monitored large manufacturing centers and energy consumption patterns, but paid little attention to abandoned Cold War facilities they considered primitive and irrelevant. Their arrogance created blind spots that humanity exploited ruthlessly. Operation Phoenix's centerpiece wasn't a massive battleship or fleet of fighters, but something smaller, more elegant, fundamentally different in philosophy. Where hegemony vessels were enormous constructs of living crystal with neural mesh cores, Phoenix was compact, built around human ingenuity rather than brute technological superiority. They rely on perfect information transmission and centralized command. Sophia explained as the prototype neared completion. Cut off that communication, and their perfect coordination falls apart. The vessel, codenamed Spectre, incorporated smuggled hegemony technology melded with uniquely human approaches. Where hegemony ships used quantum fields to deflect attacks, Spectre utilized an adaptive camouflage system that made it virtually undetectable. Where hegemony vessels employed singularity weapons, Spectre wielded silence and stealth. Most critically, while hegemony fleets depended on their neural mesh network, Spectre carried a revolutionary disruption system capable of temporarily severing those connections, leaving individual hegemony ships isolated and vulnerable. They've never faced an opponent who thinks the way we do, Sophia said, running her hand along Spectre's matte black hull. They've never faced humans. The final breakthrough came from Dr. Aisha Khan, a neurobiologist who had been studying hegemony neural mesh samples. Their network operates on quantum entanglement principles, she explained, but with a biological component we didn't initially recognize. It's not just a technological construct. It's partly organic, requiring constant reinforcement. This revelation provided the key, a targeted electromagnetic pulse, modulated at precisely the right frequency, could temporarily disrupt the neural mesh's biological components without destroying the technology. For precious minutes, hegemony vessels would be isolated, forced to operate independently, something their crews had never trained for. 3 years, 7 months, and 12 days after Operation Phoenix began, Spectre was ready. No ceremony marked its completion, only Sophia standing in the launch bay with her core team, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of its engines. If we succeed, Sophia told them, we won't just free Earth. We'll inspire every subjugated world in the hegemony to rise. Spectre departed Earth in complete radio silence, its revolutionary propulsion system leaving no energy signature for hegemony sensors to detect. Its maiden voyage took it to the edge of the solar system, where a small hegemony patrol monitored the Kuiper Belt's mining operations. The patrol consisted of 3 vessels, insignificant in the vast hegemony fleet, but the perfect test for Spectre's capabilities. They're running standard sweep patterns, Lieutenant Maya Patel, Spectre's tactical officer, reported. Defensive systems at minimal power. They're not expecting any threats in this sector. Sophia nodded. Perfect. Prepare the neural disruptor. Target the lead vessel's mesh relay. Spectre's systems hummed as it gathered energy for its first offensive action. The ship slipped between the patrol vessels, its adaptive camouflage bending light and electromagnetic radiation around it. No alarms sounded on the hegemony ships. They continued their programmed patrol route, oblivious to the human vessel in their midst. Disruptor charge, Dr. Nakamura announced, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. Field will encompass all 3 vessels. Sophia took a deep breath. This moment would determine whether 3 years of secret work would spark a revolution or end in quick annihilation. Execute, she ordered. The revolution ignites. The neural disruptor activated not with a dramatic flash or explosion, but with an eerie silence. One moment the hegemony vessels moved with perfect coordination. The next they froze, their navigation systems suddenly severed from the guiding intelligence of the neural mesh. Emergency lights flashed across the crystalline hulls as backup systems engage. This was the critical moment, the brief window of confusion before the hegemony crews could compensate. All vessels experiencing neural discontinuity, Lieutenant Paddle reported, a smile spreading across her face. Their automated defense systems are cycling through reboot sequences, adaptive camouflage maintaining full coverage. They still can't see us, Commander Rafael Torres added from the helm. Sophia leaned forward. Bring us alongside the command vessel. Deploy the boarding team. Spectre's hull opened like a predatory flower, and a team of 12 humans in advanced combat suits launched toward the disoriented hegemony ship. This wasn't a suicide mission, but a surgical strike designed to obtain the one thing Spectre still needed: access codes to the hegemony's central military network. The boarding team, led by Major Layla Khoury, encountered minimal resistance. The Vardaxian crew, cut off from the neural mesh that guided their every action, responded sluggishly, their natural decision-making abilities atrophied by millennia of dependence on their hive intelligence. Command deck secured, Major Khoury reported 18 minutes later. We have the ship's command modules and their access protocols. Downloading their navigation data now. On Spectre's bridge, Sophia allowed herself a small smile. Begin withdrawal. Let's be gone before they can report what happened. As the boarding team returned with their Vardaxian prisoners and the precious access codes, the hegemony patrol ships finally coordinated a response. Energy weapons charge, targeting systems locked onto Spectre's last known position, but the human vessel was already elsewhere, its adaptive camouflage ensuring that every shot went wide. They're attempting to re-establish connection to the neural mesh, Nakamura reported. Estimated time to success: 4 minutes. More than enough, Sophia replied. Get us out of here, Commander Torres. Random vector, full speed. Spectre vanished into the void, leaving the confused hegemony patrol to piece together what had happened. By the time they reported the incident to their command structure, the human vessel was beyond detection range, carrying with it the seeds of the hegemony's potential downfall. Back in the secure bunker beneath the Rockies, Sophia presented their captured prize to Operation Phoenix's leadership team, a Vardaxian officer and access codes that would give them unprecedented insight into hegemony operations. They didn't even consider us a threat, she said, looking at the alien captive. That's why we won today, and that's why we'll win tomorrow. The hegemony has forgotten what it means to fight for survival. We haven't. The Vardaxian captain, his scales now a dull gray from the shock of capture, stared at Sophia with multifaceted eyes that couldn't hide his confusion. You cannot stand against the hegemony, he stated, his translator converting the musical Vardaxian language into flat English. We have conquered 1,000 species more advanced than yours. Sophia smiled. But you've never conquered humans before. And there's something you should know about us. We don't like being told what we can't do. News of the encounter spread through encrypted channels to resistance cells across Earth. For the first time in 5 years, humanity had struck back against their oppressors. Spectre wasn't just a ship, it had become hope incarnate. And in the darkness between stars, other subjugated species began to hear whispers of what humanity had accomplished. The first crack had appeared in the hegemony's perfect facade. The Vardaxian High Command convened an emergency session within their vast citadel orbiting the neutron star, Centaurus X3. 9 supreme commanders, each responsible for an entire galactic sector of hegemony space, gathered around a holographic display showing the patrol incident. Impossible, declared Supreme Commander Vexcor, his scales flickering with patterns of outrage. These primitives cannot have developed technology capable of disrupting our neural mesh. And yet, responded Supreme Commander Zalfar, the eldest of the 9, the evidence suggests they have. 3 ships disabled, 1 officer captured, and the attacking vessel vanished without a trace. The hegemony's response was swift and predictable. They doubled the military presence in Earth's system, implemented stricter monitoring protocols, and demanded Earth's leaders provide information about the rogue vessel. We know nothing of this attack, Earth's appointed representative, Secretary General Mira Patel, insisted during a tense meeting with the Vardaxian ambassador. Perhaps another of your subjects has decided to resist. The ambassador's multifaceted eyes narrowed. Do not test our patience, human. Your species' continued existence is a privilege we can revoke. Secretary General Patel maintained the facade of cooperation even as hegemony enforcers began conducting raids on Earth's remaining military installations. What the hegemony failed to understand was that humanity's resistance wasn't centralized but cellular, distributed, with Operation Phoenix operating completely outside official channels. Meanwhile, Sophia's team worked feverishly to exploit their new advantage. The captured command codes gave them temporary access to portions of the hegemony's military network, an opportunity they knew wouldn't last. They'll detect the breach soon, Dr. Nakamura warned as they sifted through petabytes of hegemony tactical data. We need to focus on critical vulnerabilities. What they discovered exceeded their wildest hopes. The hegemony's apparent invincibility relied on the neural mesh, a vast quantum-entangled communication system that allowed instantaneous coordination across thousands of light years. This technological marvel was also their greatest weakness. The entire network flows through 7 primary relay stations, Quaim explained, highlighting points on a galactic map. Each station handles a sector of hegemony space. If one goes down, that entire sector loses cohesion. Sophia studied the nearest relay, a massive installation orbiting a pulsar at the edge of human-controlled space. Proxima Relay. She read from the translated data. It controls all hegemony forces in our sector. The plan that formed was audacious to the point of insanity. With their neural disruptor proven effective at short range, they would now attempt something far more ambitious, a strike at Proxima Relay itself, aiming to disable an entire sector of the hegemony fleet. But Spectre couldn't do it alone. We need more ships, Sophia told the resistance leadership. At least 4 vessels with our disruptor technology to have any chance of success. For 6 months, as hegemony oppression intensified on Earth, hidden shipyards worked around the clock. Spectre's siblings took shape: Phantom, Wraith, Revenant, and Shade, each incorporating refinements based on their first successful engagement. The captured Vardaxian officer, gradually coming to respect his captor's determination, provided crucial insights into hegemony tactical responses. Your advantage is thinking as individuals, he told Sophia during one debriefing session. My people have relied on the neural mesh for so long. Many commanders have forgotten how to make decisions alone. The human fleet, if 5 ships could be called such, departed Earth under complete communications blackout. They traveled separately using different routes, converging on a rendezvous point beyond Neptune's orbit. Each carried a vital component of the mission. None could succeed alone. As they prepared for the Proxima operation, something unexpected occurred. A small vessel of unfamiliar design approached the rendezvous point, broadcasting on frequencies only the Resistance used. "We are Nix Terry," the transmission stated in halting English. "We hear humans fight Vardaxians. We fight too." The Nix Terry, avian beings from a gas giant moon conquered centuries ago, had maintained their own resistance movement for generations. Their arrival marked a pivotal moment. Humanity was no longer fighting alone. The hegemony conquered us through division. The Nix Terry commander, Churil explained during their first face-to-face meeting aboard Spectre. They ensure no subject species trusts another. But your attack has inspired many. Others will join if you succeed at Proxima. Sophia studied the alien warrior, whose feathered crest bore the ceremonial markings of countless battles. "And if we fail, then we die free," Churil replied simply. The combined fleet, 5 human vessels, and 3 Nix Terry attack ships, departed for Proxima Relay with no illusions about the odds they faced. The relay station was guarded by a permanent defensive force of 30 hegemony warships, with hundreds more within rapid response range. Their approach relied on complete stealth. The Nix Terry ships used technology developed over centuries of resistance to generate a massive electromagnetic pulse, from a nearby stellar remnant, temporarily blinding hegemony sensors. In that brief window, the human vessels closed to attack range. Neural disruptors at full capacity, Nakamura reported as Spectre led the formation. Field will encompass the relay station and all ships within 15,000 kilometers. Sophia surveyed the tactical display, where the massive Proxima relay dominated the center, a construct the size of Earth's moon, surrounded by hegemony vessels arranged in perfect defensive formations. All ships execute Phase 1, she ordered. Simultaneously, all 5 human vessels activated their disruptors at maximum power. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Across the entire Proxima sector, thousands of hegemony ships suddenly lost their connection to the neural mesh. Alert signals cascaded through the hegemony network as an entire sector of their empire went silent. At the relay station itself, confusion reigned. Vardaxian crews, trained to function as extensions of the collective intelligence, found themselves forced to make independent decisions. Some ships maintained position. Others initiated pre-programmed defensive patterns that now conflicted with their neighbors' choices. Within minutes, the perfect formation had dissolved into chaos. Phase 2, Sophia commanded. All vessels begin targeted strikes. This was where humanity's approach differed fundamentally from the hegemonies. Instead of engaging in direct combat, where they would still be outmatched, each human ship had been assigned specific high-value targets: power relays, communication nodes, and sensor arrays. The Nixteri forces provided crucial support, their smaller vessels drawing hegemony fire while the human ships conducted their precision strikes. The battle unfolded not as a traditional slugging match between fleets, but as a strategic disruption of key systems. Proxima Relay Primary Control Hub targeted. Major Cowrie reported from Wraith. Firing main sequence now. A concentrated beam from Wraith struck the station's command center, severing its connection to the surrounding defensive grid. Phantom and Shade simultaneously disabled the primary power distribution nodes, while Revenant neutralized the station's ability to send distress signals through alternate channels. Spectre, meanwhile, approached the core of the station, the quantum entanglement chamber that linked this relay to the other 6 across hegemony space. Boarding team ready, Major Cowrie reported, now back aboard the flagship for this critical mission. We'll have one shot at this, Sophia nodded. Make it count, Major. The team deployed, fighting their way through the station's interior against increasingly desperate Vardaxian resistance. The aliens were learning, adapting to fighting as individuals, but too slowly to counter the human assault. Cowrie's team reached the entanglement chamber with 4 minutes of disruptor field remaining. Dr. Nakamura, accompanying the strike team, immediately began reconfiguring the system. We're not just going to disable it, he explained as his fingers flew across alien interfaces. We're going to convert it to a cascading quantum desynchronization transmitter. In simple terms, they would turn the hegemony's own network against itself, sending a signal that would temporarily disable not just this relay but create interference throughout the entire neural mesh system. As the disruption field began to weaken, hegemony ships gradually re-established coordination. Several broke through the defensive screen, targeting Revenant with concentrated fire. Revenant taking critical damage. Commander Torres reported. Their engines are failing. Sophia made the difficult call. Phantom, assist Revenant. All other vessels maintain position until the boarding team completes their mission. For agonizing minutes, the human fleet absorbed punishment they couldn't possibly withstand for long. 2 Nixteri vessels were destroyed, their crews sacrificing themselves to protect the mission. Phantom suffered catastrophic damage while evacuating Revenant's crew. Then, just as the disruptor field collapsed entirely, Cowrie's voice came through the static. Modifications complete. Initiating cascade now. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from Proxima Relay, traveling faster than light through the quantum-entangled network. Across thousands of light-years, hegemony vessels and installations experienced simultaneous disruption as the neural mesh collapsed. All vessels, immediate withdrawal. Sophia ordered. Emergency jump coordinates. The surviving ships, Spectre, Wraith, Shade, and one Nyx vessel, activated their engines, breaking away from the battle as confusion spread through the recovering Hegemony fleet. Behind them, Proxima relay systems went into complete meltdown, the sabotaged entanglement chamber creating a feedback loop that would take months to repair. As they regrouped at their fallback position, the magnitude of what they'd accomplished began to sink in. An entire sector of the Hegemony, thousands of worlds, including Earth, was now effectively isolated from central control. More importantly, the myth of Vardaxian invincibility had been shattered beyond repair. In the days that followed, reports filtered in through covert channels. Throughout the affected sector, subjugated species were rising up, exploiting the Hegemony's temporary vulnerability. The Nyx had launched simultaneous strikes against Hegemony outposts on 3 of their colony worlds. The aquatic cell Marin had sabotaged underwater mining operations critical to Hegemony shipbuilding. Even the normally passive Vorathi had destroyed the Hegemony administrative centers on their homeworld. One by one, representatives of these resistance movements established contact with humanity. What had begun as a desperate act of defiance was transforming into a coordinated rebellion spanning dozens of star systems. 3 weeks after the Proxima operation, Sophia stood before a holographic assembly of alien resistance leaders, the first meeting of what would soon be called the Liberation Alliance. The Hegemony conquered us individually, she told them, but they will face us united. They thought technological superiority made them invincible. We've proven that innovation, courage, and the will to be free are more powerful than any weapon they possess. Chiril, now representing the unified Nyx resistance, raised a winged appendage. The humans have shown us what we forgot, that the Hegemony can be fought, can be defeated. The Vardaxians predictably responded with brutal force, but their efforts were hampered by the continuing disruption of their command network. Without the neural mesh to coordinate their actions, they faced something entirely unfamiliar, a war on multiple fronts against enemies who didn't follow predictable patterns. 6 months after the Battle of Proxima Relay, a Hegemony diplomatic vessel approached Earth under a flag of truce. For the first time in their 3,000-year history of expansion, the Hegemony offered negotiations rather than demands. Admiral Sophia Chen, now commander of the Alliance fleet, sat across from the Vardaxian High Emissary in what had once been the United Nations Security Council chamber. Your species has caused the Hegemony considerable inconvenience, the emissary stated, his translator struggling to convey concepts alien to Vardaxian culture. We are prepared to offer more favorable terms of integration. Sophia allowed herself a small smile. I'm afraid you misunderstand the situation. We're not interested in better terms of surrender. The Alliance worlds demand recognition as sovereign entities, free from Hegemony control. Impossible, the emissary began, then paused, his multifaceted eyes studying Sophia with new understanding. You have shown us that the impossible is negotiable. The treaty that eventually emerged wasn't a complete Hegemony withdrawal. They remained too powerful for that. But it established autonomous regions where former subject species would govern themselves, freed from direct Vardaxian oversight. As Sophia watched the formal signing ceremony broadcast across 1,000 worlds that had known only subjugation for centuries, she reflected on how completely the Hegemony had misjudged humanity. They thought technology determined destiny, she told Quaim as celebrations erupted around them. They never understood that liberation begins not with better weapons, but with the refusal to accept oppression as inevitable. Quaim nodded, looking at the star-filled sky visible through the chamber's transparent dome. And now we've taught that lesson to the entire galaxy.